Okay, we've all been there, right? When your website decides to take a sudden vacation and you got to explain that to your boss, or when a client's app starts glitching out like crazy, tech problems, they can turn even the smoothest talker into a, well, bit of a mess. So today, on this deep dive, we're ditching the messiness and we're going to get clear. We're diving deep, as we do, into explaining any technical issue. And we're going to explain it with the kind of confidence that makes you sound like, well, like you know what you're talking about, no matter who you're talking to. With me on this quest for, like, crystal clear tech communication is someone who actually, well, is an expert in this stuff, ready to help us demystify the tech world a bit.
Absolutely. I think what often gets overlooked is that explaining technical things well isn't just about, showing off your tech knowledge. It's actually a super important skill to, be successful in any technical field.
Yeah, I can see that. Like if my doctors start throwing around medical jargon I didn't understand, I think I'd run out of the office.
That's actually a great analogy because just like in healthcare, communicating clearly in tech leads to faster problem solving, right? And it leads to better teamwork, and ultimately it builds trust and credibility. I mean, you wouldn't really want a surgeon who couldn't explain the procedure to you, would you?
Definitely not.
Yeah.
So where do we even begin with this whole clear tech communication thing? Didn't our sources mention some sort of vocabulary cheat sheet?
Yeah, they did. And it's more than just a list of words, though. It's about understanding how to use the nuances of technical language. For example, the sources highlighted terms like glitch, crash, workaround, and bug. These words seem pretty straightforward, but even these can, cause confusion if they're not used correctly.
So it's not just about using big, impressive words then.
Yeah.
It's about choosing the right words.
Exactly. Think of it like this, right? You adjust how you talk depending on who you're talking to. You wouldn't explain something the same way to, say, a 5-year-old as you would to a college professor.
Right. I wouldn't talk to my grandma about debugging the code. I'd probably just say fixing the problem.
Exactly. And that principle applies in, any technical field. It's about meeting your audience where they're at, language-wise.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. But sometimes, even when I'm using the right words, it feels like I'm just kind of throwing information at people. And I'm just hoping it sticks.
Is there a better way to structure these explanations? Our sources mention some sort of framework, right?
Yes, they did. And this is where it gets interesting. They proposed this 5-step framework for explaining technical problems clearly. And I gotta say, it's pretty brilliant.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What are these magical 5 steps?
Well, step 1 is all about being clear and precise. So you need to state the problem clearly, right? And avoid using vague language. So, for example, instead of saying the website is down, you'd say users are unable to access the website. They're receiving an error message when they try to load the homepage.
So detail is key. Absolutely. The more specific you are, the less room there is for someone to misunderstand.
Okay, that makes sense. What's step 2?
Step 2 is all about providing context. When did this problem start? Did anything change recently? Was there a new software update maybe? Giving this information helps pinpoint the potential cause of the problem.
Ah, so it's like detective work. Mm-hmm. We're gathering clues. I like it.
Exactly. Then step 3 is where we connect the problem to its impact.
So we're talking about the so what factor. Why should anyone even care about this technical glitch?
Exactly. And this is where you really tailor your explanation to your audience. What are the consequences that matter most to them? Is it lost sales, missed deadlines, security risks maybe? By highlighting the impact, you're emphasizing, how urgent the problem is.
So if I'm talking to my manager about a software bug, I wouldn't just say, hey, there's a bug. I'd say something like, this bug is preventing customers from completing their purchases and it's costing us, X amount of dollars per hour.
Now you're getting it. You've stated the problem clearly, you've provided context, and you've highlighted the impact. You're 3 steps into the framework and already speaking the language of, clear and effective tech communication.
This is great. Okay, I'm ready for steps 4 and 5. What's next?
All right, so we've laid the groundwork, right? With the first 3 steps. Stating the problem clearly, providing context, and then highlighting the impact. Now let's move on to step 4.
Okay, hit me with it. What's the wisdom behind step 4?
Well, step 4 is where you offer a potential cause or diagnosis, if you have one. This isn't about, definitively solving the problem right then and there, but it's more about sharing your insights based on the information you have at the moment.
So it's like offering an educated guess. But in a way that doesn't make me sound like I'm just making stuff up.
Exactly. It's about transparency, showing that you're actively thinking about the problem and trying to figure it out. For instance, you could say something like, based on, when it started happening and the error messages, it seems like the issue might be related to that recent server migration.
So it's about connecting the dots, offering a plausible explanation, even if it's not, a confirmed solution yet.
Precisely. And this leads us to the final and perhaps most crucial step. Step 5.
Okay, the grand finale. Drum roll, please. What's step 5 all about?
Step 5 is where you outline the next steps or the proposed solution. It's about taking action, and providing reassurance that the problem is being addressed.
So it's not just about identifying the problem and freaking everyone out. It's about offering a path forward.
Exactly. And this step, it can take different forms depending on the situation. It could be, suggesting a specific fix, outlining a plan for further investigation, or even just delegating the task to the appropriate team.
So if I'm explaining a website bug to my manager, instead of ending with, well, the website's broken, I'd say something like, I'm going to investigate the error logs, see if I can pinpoint the cause, and I'll keep you updated on my progress.
Perfect. You've taken ownership of the problem, you've outlined a plan of action, and you've reassured your manager that you're on top of it.
This 5-step framework it's brilliant. It's like a roadmap for clear and effective communication. Even when everything's feeling kind of chaotic.
It is. And the beauty of it is that it can be applied to almost any technical problem, regardless of your level of expertise.
As you were talking, I was thinking about all the times I've struggled to explain tech issues to my non-techie friends and family. I could have really used this framework. It would have saved me a lot of frustration and a lot of hand waving.
Absolutely. And that brings us to another crucial aspect of clear tech communication, avoiding jargon.
Ah, yes. The dreaded jargon. It's like a secret language that only, the tech initiated can understand.
And it's one of the biggest culprits of communication breakdowns, especially when you're talking to people who aren't familiar with the technical lingo.
It's like that time I tried to explain to my grandmother how to clear her browser cache. I was using all the right terms, talking about cookies and temporary files. She just looked at me like I was speaking another language.
That's a classic example, and it highlights why it's, so important to adjust our language based on who we're speaking with. Our sources, they talk about the concept of cognitive load, which basically means how much mental effort it takes to process information.
So when I bombard my grandma with technical jargon, her cognitive load just shoots through the roof.
Precisely. It's like trying to cram too many suitcases into a car trunk, right? It just won't fit. And that leads to, confusion, frustration, and then ultimately a breakdown in communication.
Okay, I get it. Jargon is bad. But how do we avoid it without dumbing things down too much? I don't want to talk to my colleagues like they're 5.
Right. You don't have to. It's about finding that sweet spot between, clarity and accuracy. And our sources offer some great tips for achieving this. One of them is using analogies and metaphors.
So instead of saying the server's experiencing high CPU load, I could say the server's working so hard it's like it's trying to run a marathon while carrying a piano on its back.
Exactly. You've taken a complex technical concept and made it relatable, made it understandable using a vivid image.
I like it. It's like turning technical jargon into tech poetry.
And another powerful technique is to focus on the why behind the problem.
The why. You mean explaining the root cause of the issue?
Not just the root cause, but also why it matters to the person you're talking to. Remember, people are more likely to understand and cooperate if they see the purpose behind, the problem and its solution.
So instead of just telling my friend to clear his browser cache, I should explain that it will help his computer run faster because it's getting rid of old, unnecessary data.
Exactly. You've given him a reason to care. A why that makes the task more meaningful. And this applies to, more complex technical explanations as well. By explaining the why, you're not just giving instructions, you're providing understanding.
Okay. So we've talked about avoiding jargon. We've talked about using analogies and explaining the why. Yeah. What other nuggets of wisdom do our sources offer for clear tech communication?
Well, they emphasize the importance of connecting the technical problem to its real world impact, and this goes back to what we discussed earlier with the 5-step framework.
Right. It's about highlighting the so what factor. Why should anyone care about this technical glitch?
Exactly. Instead of just saying there's a bug in the software, explain how it affects the listener's world. This bug is preventing customers from completing their purchases, or this glitch is causing delays in processing orders.
So we're not just like throwing technical terms around. We're painting a picture of the problem's consequences.
Precisely. And this is where storytelling can play a powerful role.
Storytelling? Wait, are we talking about bedtime stories now?
Not quite, but the principle is similar. By framing a technical problem as a mini narrative, we can make it, more engaging, more memorable, and more persuasive.
Okay, this sounds intriguing. Tell me more about this whole tech storytelling thing.
Well, it's all about finding the human element within the technical issue. Instead of just, listing facts and figures, we create a narrative with a beginning, a middle, and an end. We introduce characters, describe their challenges, and then, outline the quest for a solution.
So instead of saying the database crashed due to a power outage, I might say. Okay, you've totally piqued my curiosity. How do we actually weave a story around something as, technical as a database crash?
Well, it's all about finding, those relatable elements. Think of it this way. Instead of just saying, the database crashed due to a power outage, you could say, imagine our database as this bustling city, right? Data's flowing smoothly, everything's working like a well-oiled machine, then bam, power outage. It's like the whole city goes dark in an instant, and suddenly everything grinds to a halt.
Wow, I can practically see the data traffic jams. That's way more engaging than just, stating the cold, hard facts.
Exactly. And it's not just about, being more interesting. It's about making the problem understandable, right? And relatable. People might not get excited about a database, but they can definitely understand the chaos of a citywide blackout.
Okay, so we've set the theme, right, with our little data city. What's next in our techie tale?
Conflict. Just like any good story, there needs to be a challenge, an obstacle to overcome. In this case, the conflict is the technical problem itself.
So we're not just saying, oops, the database crashed. We're talking about the ripple effects, the consequences, the drama.
Precisely. You're building suspense, orders can't be processed, customers are getting error messages, the website's down. It's a full-blown digital crisis.
I'm on the edge of my seat. What happens next? Does our heroic IT team swoop in to save the day?
Of course. Every good story has a hero. And in our little tech narrative here, the hero is the solution.
So we talk about how the team, diagnosed the problem, maybe found a workaround, or even pulled an all-nighter to get things back online.
Exactly. You're highlighting the effort, the expertise, and ultimately the triumph over the technical challenge. And most importantly, you're showing how the solution brought that data city back to life.
I love it. It's like those disaster movies where, against all odds, they manage to, avert catastrophe at the last second. But instead of an asteroid, it's a faulty server.
You got it. And think about, the impact this kind of storytelling has. It's not just about, relaying information. It's about creating a shared experience, right?
Yeah.
It's about making people feel invested in the outcome.
This is blowing my mind. I never thought I'd be thinking about explaining tech problems like I'm writing a screenplay.
And that's the beauty of it. It's not about becoming a novelist or anything. It's about recognizing the power of narrative, right?
Yeah.
And applying it to a seemingly dry topic like technology. It's about adding that human touch.
So to recap here, we've got our 5-step framework for, clear explanations. We've talked about avoiding jargon, embracing analogies, and highlighting the why. And now we've even added storytelling to the mix.
It's a powerful toolkit for, anyone who wants to really master this art of explaining technical problems clearly. And remember, practice makes perfect. The more you try incorporating these techniques, the more natural and effective they'll become.
This has been honestly incredibly insightful. I feel like I've leveled up my communication skills today.
And that's what it's all about, because at the end of the day, clear communication is about more than just conveying information. It's about building understanding, fostering collaboration, and, ultimately creating a more tech-savvy world, one clear explanation at a time.
Well said. So to our listeners out there, The next time you find yourself facing, a technical challenge, remember it's not just about the technical fix, it's about how you communicate it.
Exactly. By using clear language, engaging storytelling and a dash of empathy, you can transform even the most complex tech issue into a story that informs, engages, and inspires.
And on that note, we'll wrap up our deep dive for today. Until next time, happy communicating.